Hi and welcome to Yeshivat Shem Ve'aver. I am Rabbi David Katz, and this is Parshas Shelach, Motzi Shabbos, Israel time. Questions, comments, or feedback, as always, I can be reached at Rabbi Katz at virtualyeshiva.com. Let's go ahead and jump in. The standard procedure. Start with the Haftorah explanation, and from there, go into the Zohar background, which I'm finding very enlightening every week, and we'll jump then into the Parsha as it applies to, basically, at this point, it's safe to say, Ger Jewish relations in the Torah, because really the two, I think the best template can be brought down with the menorah. The menorah is one, right? So I think about the message that's been coming out is showing how the two are actually one. Which really goes back then to the secret of the Torah. I am Hashem your God, no other gods. Hashem spoke at Sinai. Two, they heard as one. It's called Mepia Gevora. From the mouth of God, spoke one, I heard two. The Vilna Gaon then explains all of Song of Songs, King Solomon, the Holy of Holies of the writings of the Tanakh. It can be boiled down to this principle of two that really became one. We see the image all over the place. Such things such as wisdom and understanding, male, female, heaven and earth. Basically, if you look at every component of reality, of let's say Ger reality, because the Ger sees the essence of Torah in language, two are always one. One last check. Are we good on sound? Is everybody else good on sound? All right, good. Just for standard procedure, if somebody types two, if you guys, whoever does here, if you can give a one right away, that way I know we're not threatening to reset the program. So if there's ever a two, quickly come back. If you're hearing one, go with one. Okay, into the Haftorah. Here we go. The Haftorah was about Rachav, Joshua sending Caleb and Pinchas into Jericho. Now, the simple message is always going to be the same. That here we have 12 spies in Parshas Shelach, and by Jericho and Joshua, we have another 2 spies. Which is interesting, the spies are again Caleb. Again, now it's Joshua sending the spy. But now, since Joshua's not a spy, who does he send? Pinchas of the tribe of Levi, who also was not found to be amongst the sinning spies. Before we even get anywhere off the ground, I want one thing to remain clear. The word for spy is tor. I know we call the spies meraglim, but the word is tor. In the Zohar, it's really fantastic. Anyone that knows the writings of the Vilna Gaon, follow the things that I've taught for X amount of time. The redemption on a totality of a level is found in the 2nd chapter of Song of Songs. Once again, Song of Songs. And it's called Kol Tor Nishma B'Artzenu. The voice of the turtle dove is heard in the land. That is basically the redemption, the essence of Torah in a nutshell. So in this Parsha, we have the Torah, let's say, Ger concept. Now, why do I say Ger concept? If you remember last week, the vernacular of the Ger is what is the composition of the Torah. Right? The Ger reality is what the Torah is made of. So here we don't have Song of Songs right in front of us. This is not the writings of Solomon. So I don't have the voice of the turtle dove right here. We have doves in Vayikra, and maybe you can make an explanation there. But in this Parsha, we have Tor, in a loosely turtle dove or spy, but in the metaphysical sense, it goes up. Remember, the words of the Ger go straight up to the higher world. Thus, what the Zohar does is it encapsulates the Tor, the spy here, in the very end, it says the rectification is the literal sense of the verse in Song of Songs, when the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. So mind you, that the Zohar takes up the Torah here as the prime target to explain complete redemption. Now why is it going to come here? Because this is complete destruction. Tisha B'Av, the destruction of the temples, is in this Parsha. So you'd have to say, where would you find the building of the third temple in, let's say, a 5-book of Moses scenario? Forget Ezekiel. Forget Song of Songs. 5 books. The essential words that are derived from a Ger reality. The Ger reality is predicated to building the temple. Now when I say Ger reality, I mean the Jew is included in that Ger as well. Because remember, the Jews are called Gerim. But if you're going to relate to the Jews on the side that they are a Jew, well, why don't I just call you either a Texan, a New Yorker? Everybody has their domain. Ger, Jew, whatever you are. But the Ger is the meeting spot of Torah. Now the Ger becomes a Ger by leaving something behind. You would assume then the Jew would follow suit with King David and say, I am a Ger too. In fact, the halacha follows this. A Baal Tshuva is considered a Ger. You don't say to a Baal Tshuva Jew, why are you thinking you're religious? Just yesterday you were doing this, this, and this. So the Ger is really the headspace of understanding Torah. And the opportunity for the Gerim is to be, let's say, front and center, front row in such an endeavor. Now the flip side, the Jew is, let's say, coming with the knowledge of the Hebrew of the term. So each one has the benefit of the other. The Ger has the concept built in. Let's say that comes from Shem. The Jew is coming from the Hebrew knowledge of the word itself. Let's say that's Aver. And both of them have to come together and recognize that they're both Gerim. It wasn't easy for the Ger, all the more so it's not easy for the Jew to take the Torah seriously in the language of the Ger to say, I am a Ger. King David does it, he was laughed at. But in the end, look who will be laughing. So when I say the words of the Ger, the Torah of the Ger, that really is a general statement of everybody on earth. When one realizes he is a Ger, his world becomes Torah reality. Our job then, once it is Torah reality, to refine those vessels. What is a Torah? What is a Torah? I don't know how you guys feel about the word spies. I don't know what thing about it. I don't know what way you took it, but when you come along and you say, did you know a spy is a Torah? And then you bring in the secrets of redemption, the Kol HaTorah, and then you find out the Zohar goes ballistic on Torah and really brings it out into the forefront. So you see how the secrets of the Torah really are derived from the simple meaning, the pshat of the Torah. You don't need fancy gymnastics. It's all right there. So this is where the Torah takes up the term Torah. And we come into the story of Rachav and Joshua, Caleb, Pinchas. And why do they choose Jericho? Jericho, if you remember, is the spot where Joshua is going to end up. He's going to marry Rachav. So when Caleb goes to the cave of the forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he connecting to the Ger Tzedek, mind you. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Ger Tzadikim coming from Shem. So how does Caleb conquer the Hebron area? 7 laws of Noah, i.e. words of Torah, i.e. words of Ger Torah. Universal words that penetrate everybody on earth. Now why do I say Ger Torah, Ger words? Because it's not idolatrous words, it's not secular words, and it's certainly not Jewish words. They're words of, let's say, a universal language, a universal vision. That's repairing the world. If Joshua comes in and says, L'chora, Brabaisai, mamish, what was the Iker Inyan of the Pashtus Maisa here? I don't think he's coming in speaking Yeshivish. And he's certainly not coming in talking like he just read an article on Justin Bieber. The universal words of the Ger penetrate. They have soul. There's literally a body and a soul to the Torah on that level. When you connect to the Torah from, let's say, the perspective of the Ger. You have to be aligned with the Torah to allow the words to literally jump off the page like a 3D model, or like a hologram. Joshua and Caleb understand this. They come in to spy the land when everybody else is thinking machine guns and grenades. How are we going to beat these guys? Joshua and Caleb come in, they're thinking, let's talk Torah with them. I mean, come on, if it's going to be a Ger Toshav filled universe, don't we have to talk Torah to these guys? So the other guys, the negative spies, they're speaking in terms of hand grenades and rocket launchers. They get freaked out and they say, how on earth are we going to do it? They speak evil reports on the land. Caleb and Joshua are already starting to think kiruv, outreach, conquer with words of Torah, 7 laws of Noah, to which the commentaries even say the best way of defeating a Amalek is not with hand grenades and rocket launchers, but literally with the 7 laws of Noah have the power to, as Rachav herself mentions, you have melted us. Look to the prophet Zechariah. In those days, blah, 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 the Messianic days, people's eyes and ears were melted, this and that. I didn't look. Joe, if you might want to look while I'm speaking, if you can look in the Hebrew in the prophet Zechariah, where it says that their ears and their nose and their tongues melted away, I want to know, is it the same language by Rachav in the Haftorah where she says, you've melted us. You've melted everybody in the land. I forgot to look that part up, but it's the same English. So I assume it's a similar, if not exact, Hebrew analysis. Meaning, the prophecy in Zechariah, if it's a little different, it doesn't matter. It's the same content. The prophecy in Zechariah might be that messianic fulfillment. Everyone reads it as, let's say, a nuclear bomb. Total apocalypse. What if it's 7 laws of Noah gone viral? What if the King Messiah conquers the world through a viral 7 laws? People start taking it on, and you melt the land. No need for nukes. In any rate, Joshua and Caleb did take this offer up, and it's not an accident they enter in Jericho. It's a scam. Jericho was already conquered. Joshua already conquered it. And he looked at Hebron, Caleb already conquered it. All of his concubines, which the Zohar mentions, are Ger Tzedek. All of the Hebron area belongs to Caleb. Out of that becomes a family, you might know them, the King David family. Joshua is buried in Har Ephraim, the mountain of Ephraim district. His daughter from Rachav, who is prophesied to have given birth to the most important high priests and prophets, his daughter marries Pinchas. So you essentially have the seeds of Messiah, son of Joseph and David, coming from this Hebron area, coming to David, and Joshua and Rachav producing Mashiach ben Yosef. So this the union in the permitted sense. How Joshua was able to be with Rachav on the level of the Ger Tzedek, similar to Ruth. A fulfillment of the Torah to the point bearing Jewish seed. Ruth, Rachav. The Zohar all the time compares the 3 daughters, Ruth, Rachav, and Tamar. Tamar being the literal daughter of Shem. The whole story of Jericho on the surface looks like just a reiteration of the spies. But what it really is underneath is what Joshua and Caleb were doing when they were spying. Don't focus on the Tor, the spy, but rather Kol HaTor, the voice of the turtle dove. The voice of the spy. What was Joshua and Caleb saying? They were not saying Lashon Hara. That means they were not thinking in terms of hand grenades and rockets. Joe, if you can type 1 if you're still looking that up, if you got that. I'm curious as this goes on. Caleb and Joshua are conquering the land. And to the point Rachav lets it out, the land was already conquered. The only lack of conquering is a famous concept that, for example, Joseph. Joseph was what's called Yesod, the foundation. All the excess was removed, the redemption could come, and what happens? They throw him back in Egypt, let's go at it again. Caleb and Joshua conquer the land, it's ready for the third temple, let's go to Israel and get the third temple built. The other 10 tribes, they say, the spies, they bring back the excess material, put, let's say, the foreskin back on the Yesod. Now you have to do it all over again. Tisha B'Av comes into the picture. Temples are destroyed. Mind you, Rachav is the same letters as destruction, charev, rearranged. Rearrange it again, it's bachar, chosen, as in God's chosen house. Inside the Haftorah is the secrets of redemption. Look to Rachav, look to Joshua, look to Caleb, not as spies, but as their voice. Slide it now over to the Zohar. And it talks about where did Gerim come from? What is a Ger? So in the level of the heavenly sphere of the upper world, it's a female world in the spirit. And every night at midnight, it's called Tikkun Chatzos, the repair of midnight. When David would awaken with his harp and play music to basically accentuate those souls uniting at that hour. As these souls unite and produce light upon light, type upon type, and the souls of the Gerim are then derived from these unions and placed in the upper Garden of Eden. This is where the Gerim come from. This is really what's called a Ger Tzedek. The Zohar then goes on to explain that everything that comes new in the world is captured by the Gerim. Anyone who has, let's say, the knowledge of I am a Ger, the awareness, Jew or Gentile, I am the awareness of the Ger, it becomes high definition, new thoughts, new visions, new appreciations. It's like worker bees and honey. When we go to sleep at night, we deposit all this newness into the spiritual realm, called the dream world. And the spiritual dimension of the Torah, i.e. the spies, is the inner dimension of Enoch, who lived before, and Elijah, who are the prototype of, let's call it, the two messiahs of this world, Ben Joseph and Ben David. In the angelic spiritual realm, all this goes on in our sleep. So the Zohar then takes the liberty to explain how you go from Torah, from the spies, to the mystical connection, which, by the way, that also was the inner dimension of Elisha. Elisha the prophet, who what did he do? He showed his love for the Gerim. He was probably the number one advocate of all time, and that, in fact, is what has sealed the rectification of the worlds for all of time. A very Kabbalistic explanation of what goes on spiritually as a repair of the spies. And if you want to, that's called the chomer. That's the matter. That's the DNA under the surface. If you want to take the words for what they are, go back to what was spoken of in the Haftorah Joshua and Caleb simply spoke about the 7 laws of Noah and that of the Ger. Those are vessels that contain light. Those lights go all the way up and down. They attract the newness of this world. And eventually, when those words are heard in this world, then you will have the voice of the turtle dove, he who is loyal to his master, the voice of the spy who witnesses new things. Now let's go into the article. It was a very interesting idea brought down by the Arizal. The original 12 tribes were infused into the 12 spies. Joshua received Ephraim. Judah was given into Caleb. And Moses, as Levi was not chosen, when Moses gives Joshua the letter Yud to make his name Yehoshua, the tribe of Levi was infused into Joshua Ephraim. This dynamic will go on throughout the entire, basically the rest of the world. If you look in the burial locations of Joshua and Pinchas' father Eleazar, they're in close proximity to land that Joshua gave over to Pinchas. It's called Givat Pinchas, the hill of Pinchas. Pinchas, a Levi, marries Joshua's and Rachel's daughter. The two then are very much side by side and always working with Judah. The 3 tribes that did not sin. The 3 basically greatest tribes of the 12 tribes. In the article, there is a template of 3-on-3. The first thing we talk about is Caleb and Joshua as spies that spoke the 7 laws of Noah. That's the level of the Jew looking on to the Ger. The Ger being on the level of a daughter, receiving the Torah in its infancy. Now, why do we say they were receiving the Torah in their infancy? That's what happened. The Jews are coming in to the land of Israel. Their job is to set up the temple, teach the 7 laws. Now, that would make the Ger, a daughter, a new student of Torah. And if you want to say it relates to the Jew is also a new student of Torah, ironically. The Jew had the luxury of being at Sinai. But this is all new. Then time goes on. The Gerim might want to develop offerings to God while being in the land together. Both are now on equal plane, a sister or brother to each other. And the last view is the tzitzit, the fringed garments that contain the laws. The Ger now is established, a nation, and is on the level of a mother, where Torah can be said in the name of the Ger. Meaning he's a proper student of Torah, grew up, and now is a Torah person. The Jew's job is to basically raise the world to Ger Toshav, as the Jews stood at Sinai, bring the world to the entire understanding of Torah, Ger Toshav, and the world will go through stages of daughter, sister, and mother. As everything really follows this pattern. But the point of the article is 3 distinct perspectives. The Jew's view of the Ger, the Jew and the Ger viewing each other together, and ultimately then the Ger viewing the Jew. And how the 3 different perspectives work. That's the template. So the first thing we go into is Joshua and Caleb. Joshua and Caleb come into the land. They are spreading 7 laws. They conquer where everybody else fails. The essence of the spies on this level, Joshua and Caleb garment, something that is called the upper level of the righteous degree of Elijah. A lot of times in writings you'll hear such and such was Elijah, such and such was the angel Matat, which is short for the angelic form of Enoch. Joshua and Caleb were so righteous in what they did. They elevated to the place of the Ger Tzedek above, that level above that's called Ger Tzedek. Like the Garden of Eden depot spot of souls of Ger Tzedek. They literally, in their minds, ascended that high. By doing such, they did not merit to have sons. Then when there's going to be the next spy in the story of Rachel, Pinchas will reach this level of Elijah. And then Pinchas will go up to the fiery chariot above, as is known. That leaves Elisha down below, Elisha the prophet, with double the portion of Elijah. When the 10 spies sinned, these righteous souls that garment the Elijah above, Joshua, Caleb, Elijah himself, Pinchas, Elisha, and so forth and so on. They repair the original sin brought down by Judah with his sons and their errors with Tamar, which eventually led them to die, leading to Tamar and Judah to give birth to Peretz and Zerah, which will then give way to ultimately the husbands of Ruth and Orpah, ultimately a lineage that would focus into David, which would bring the messianic revelation of the repair of the worlds from that blemish in Judah. The spies then are a certain type of garment for that sin. As it's all about destruction. Destruction in the worlds. At this point, it was in this world brought down the destruction of the temple. Tisha B'Av representing the destruction of the temple offered by the spies. Caleb and Joshua representing Joseph and Judah repair what is broken. And their level gives it another revelation to ultimately bring into this world a third temple reality where all is in repair. That's how deep this goes. That's why the Zohar went so deep. As all of these characters on the story are, let's say, the words of the Ger, right? Just words, Caleb and Judah and Pinchas and Joshua. But the inner dimension of all of these characters, they go straight up. It's called Mochen the Godless, high intellect. These are not, let's say, simple characters in the Torah. Every one of these characters, Caleb, whose name means like the heart, Kalev. Remember, the Torah starts with a Beit of Bereshis, ends with the Lamed of Israel, which is again Lamed and Beit. So all of these characters, Judah has Yud Kei Vav Kei in his name. Joshua has secrets in his name. This is 100% a Kabbalistic universe working to the point of repair. That's the subterranean level. What we get out of it is we see the obvious level of destruction. And we have the words and vessels given to us that offer the repair on the ultimate level. That's the unified universe, the Ger universe, where all is in repair. The job then is to become Gerim. The Gerim proper have to leave everything behind, become a Ger. The Jew has to take the advice of the Torah. Don't forget you are a Ger. It's the same on both sides. Then they can unite on those terms. But as long as everyone says, I'm not a Ger, or I'm a Ger that does my 7 go to heaven, whatever it is, the more the division comes out of it, the more the sacred words in the Parsha are distorted. And the whole point of the Parsha is that the words must remain purified, refined, able to ascend. And that's the message of the Parsha. When we look at the beginning of the Jew looking, let's say, at the Ger, where the Jews are in the land looking out. That's the idea of the third temple, the windows that are narrow and get wider to the outside. That's from the message of the Torah is to send the 7 laws out throughout the whole land until from one end of the universe to the other, says the Zohar, the voice of repair that goes from one end of the universe to the other. That is the mission going into the land. That is the mission going from the end of the world into the land that has to go back out into the world until it comes into the land. This is a running and returning relationship. That's how the temple's built. At any time it stalls and there's no dynamic run and return or movement, then you find the destruction. So once the Jew in the land says, I'm not a ger, once the gerim outside the land say, we're not gerim, or we're not working with those kinds of gerim, whenever there's a duality of gerim, it's over. There must be a one resonance of ger throughout the world. Caleb and Joshua got that. Caleb goes to the cave of Machpelah, the cave of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who are gerim. Joshua goes and finds Rachel. Everybody else says, either they're not gerim, and we certainly are not gerim. They took the Torah message wrong. Hashem clearly says, you are gerim in the land. And that is a very serious message. That's the voice that must go out and around and come back without any grains of sand in that water. The underlying message of the Parsha, then, becomes the teaching of Shem. If we cheat and go to the end of the Parsha, why does it end with tzitzit? Why must it end with tzitzit? The answer is, tzitzis comes in the white thread, in the merit of Shem, and the blue thread in the merit of Abraham. Shem gets the merit when he covers up Noah's father with Japheth. And by the merit of tzitzis, i.e. the commandments given to Shem's seed, Japheth is given the blessing, you shall dwell in the tents of Shem. The war in the end of days, Gog and Magog, that which is against Torah, seeks to reverse or reinterpret that meaning. Shem's job is then to keep the Torah alive from Bereshis to the end of the book. Abraham then meets Shem at the Temple Mount, has the blue thread of tzitzis given over to him, which represents Shemayim, the heavenly level above. And mind you, back to predate something, the teaching of the Zohar about the gerim being from this union above in light by the soul, the female souls, that is the original source that the ger is rooted in Shemayim, in heaven, on that level. From the teaching of the tzitzis, then we find in the Parsha that the 7 laws of Noah, teaching of Joshua and Caleb, through the Olah and offerings in the land, as the Parsha says, one Torah for everybody. Ultimately with the tzitzis, the thread underneath, the thread, no pun intended, is that the level of non-destruction, of building, of continuity, of non-perversion, really does extend from Shem. Caleb goes to draw from the cave of the forefathers as an extension to Shem. Rachav is then a spiritual daughter from Shem, says the commentaries. There you have the concept of in the land, the Jew connecting to Shem is then the repair. The opposite is immediate destruction. And again, for source-worthy information, The best way to conquer Amalek is from the evil nation, from the 7 laws. The 7 laws have the power to do a repair that physical conflict doesn't have the chance to do. And this is the paradigm through time. The Jews are coming into the land fresh with, let's say, the fiery Baal Tshuva, going to light the world on fire. Let's bring the Ger Toshav to the forefront. This goes all the way through the first temple. The repair of the tribes comes in that time. Caleb and Joshua begin the repair of the sin of Judah, culminating with Elijah and Elisha. At that time, the repair is done. Bring down the first temple. The repair then goes into the second temple. Ultimately, you're going to get to Hanukkah with the Greeks. That's the first war of Gog and Magog. Military might of Japhet rising up against Shem, threatening the Torah on an importance level. Japhet in the Torah is called Japhet the Great. Shem is called Shem Rabbah. Shem the Great. Japhet says, I am greater. I am going to then defeat you. So the Gerim of that time, the Gerim with the Jews in the land, rise up and beat Greece. The power of the 7 laws of Noah, the Torah of that, is what defeats the Greek army. The miracle of the menorah comes down. Instantly, the Torah then is changed into Jewish Torah, meaning the Jewish nation succeeds, let's say, halfway in fighting for the truth, i.e. 7 laws of Noah, Torah of Shem. Now to commit that to writing and enter the exile of Edom. The exile of Edom then poses the time of writing the Torah, and as it's being written, it's always in danger of being destroyed. Life becomes for the Jews very Jewish. The Gerim then take a different mode of conduct, the era of conversion. People start to convert. There's less outreach. There's less Ger-Jewish relationship. Why? Now you have Christianity. Now you have Islam. And the attack against the Torah in Israel begins. Anti-Semitism. That's the entire length of Gog and Magog. So eventually you have the message of the 7 laws dwindling to next to nil. Judaism has its peaks and horizons and begins to descend. Until the end of days where we are now, Judaism is very Jewish. Its knowledge of 7 laws, nil. Nearly extinct. The very ideology and the fire that was successful coming out of the desert, coming with Caleb and Joshua, extinguished. The attack on Torah looks pretty good. Japheth rises up and says, end the power of Shem. But there's one trick. Now the Gerim are coming back on the level of reminding the Jews what the real Torah is about. Resurrecting the Torah of Shem. By not introducing something new. But the newness comes from what was always there. And now that it was always there, the subterranean of this Parsha. Now when you talk about it, think about it after such a layoff, it's really something new. So now those souls of the Gerim have what to do. They're busy in 24-hour days, night and day, every inch of the worlds. The Torah begins to come back. The Ger becomes now a player in Torah. Enter the next stage. The Ger Jewish cooperation in the offerings of the Olah. The offerings that go to God. The whole question is, should a Ger give the offering? The 2 ways that a Ger should offer or has to offer, the Giur, the conversion of the Nefesh into Ger proper. He has an offering he has to give to the temple. So as long as the temple's not built, you see why it's a temple society for the Ger in particular. For the Jew, he's only placed in the land to serve the temple. For the Ger, his Ger-ness is built into the temple. So just as way in the Parsha, you're either destroying the temple or you're building it. That's what the Parsha is all about. That offering of the Olah is what basically attaches that soul to the temple. Or in the lack of the temple, waiting for the temple to be built. The other type of offering is a thanksgiving offering. And that thanksgiving offering, he is to build an altar and can offer it anywhere, much like Naaman did in the story with Elisha, and David also did something similar with Aravna on the Temple Mount. The reason why the rabbis say not to do it is because to make a mistake in which type of Olah goes up can be catastrophic for the soul. But the whole point is it should be done. As a right to do it, an opportunity, it's available to be done. The cooperation on this level of sisterhood, two souls corresponding, that's the cooperation that needs to have this achieved. The only thing lacking, let's say, is Torah knowledge. Not just for the Ger, but for the Jewish Ger as well. Remember, in the end of days, the Torah is lacking. But the Torah was never really torn away. It's still there. Comes the Torah. The Ger who learns Torah is compared to the high priest. Bring in this high priest status. He now learns about the Olah, and that opens the door to any mitzvah there is. Now there's precedent. Now that you're in the Torah, learning the Torah, whatever you want to do, you do. The Torah grows from this point. And that's also encoded in Shem's name. If you take the initial letters of Shem's name, it gives you the value korban, offering. What does korban mean? Many people think it means sacrifice. It means to draw close together. So this random Olah in the middle of the Torah Parsha, between the spies and the end, that gets into Tzitzis, is the opportunity to draw forth an offering to God. Just by being involved, either learning or doing, allows everything to come together. The Bahir says that in the altar in the temple, the offerings that go on to draw everything into unison. So if we're going to find achdus, oneness, that the menorah of light in the world, it comes from the korban, to draw everything together. That's really what that unity exists as. There's no greater unity than the nation of priests working with the level of the high priest, in conjunction to find out this Torah that was always there, but see it in a new light. Now they're working together. Now they're looking at each other. First, they say the Jews entering the land, saying, they're looking out, saying, who's who, what's what. Now everyone's grown up, and everyone's looking at each other. Bring the last level together, the tzitzit. The tzitzis that come under the merit of Abraham and Shem. This is where the Ger essentially takes his position for eternity amongst Israel. We all know about the Shin, the three-headed Shin and the four-headed Shin. The fourth head, the righteous Ger. He who is grafted in. That's how the Torah defines it. He who dwells amongst you for generations. The level of the mother. Torah is said in his name. He's a part of the nation. The four-headed Shin on the head of a man's tefillin is there. The tzitzis are there to be gaze-worthy. Gaze-worthy. The Jew is praying with talus and tefillin. The Jews are walking around with the tzitzit. The Gerim are there to perceive and gaze. All the newness, the morning dew, everything that comes down from sleep, now kind of is reflected off of the tzitzis. Because there's a concept of gazing. The tzitzis gives reason to gaze. The ger gazing upon the land everywhere. If there's nothing to look at, there's nothing to look at. And what does the Torah tell you you're looking at? The fear of heaven and the mitzvahs. 620 mitzvahs. Mind you, keter is the gematria 620. Crown spells literally ketor, like the Torah, i.e. like the spy, like the turtle dove. So when there's a 620 consciousness in the land, that is like a spy. That's how we gain insight into those new qualities, the morning dew of the land of Israel. Bring the ger Toshav in the world. The world is like the land of Israel. What is Israel called? The land of the tzvi, the land of the deer. Why deer? The skin of a deer is too small to fill the back of the deer. It miraculously stretches. So too the land of Israel will hold not just the Jew, let's say. The miracle is there all the gerim in the world will fit in the property called Eretz Yisrael. Tzvi, deer, is the gematria emuna, faith. The tzitzis that are strings are white. Abraham has the blue string. This becomes the purifying fire. The white fire on black fire of Shem, and the blue in the secret of the flame of Abraham. Giving way to all the commandments, which is knowledge of all of reality, which is a full life, a full soul, light in the world, reaching up and above to reach the throne of glory above. The mitzvahs then stand for a full life of every day. They're being caused for something new. King Solomon says there's nothing new under the sun. And there isn't. What is new is that when people unite and exponentially the numbers grow, new thoughts, new perceptions grow. That results in Chidushei Torah, new Torah that comes down, and the angels are put back to work. The whole Kishka's DNA under the surface we talked about becomes reality. All that Kabbalistic stuff becomes reality. And the words on the surface then are filled with meaning. All of a sudden life becomes filled with meaning. And you don't necessarily have to know the DNA underneath, although it's there. The body itself becomes a radiance of light. And that begins to elevate. The Maharal explains, as I mentioned the last couple of weeks, the essence of war is against the Torah. Against the sons of Shem, against Shem himself. The life that we live is all about the sons of Noah. Canaan was given, let's say, the land of Israel, and it was commanded to take it from him for whatever reason. Noah curses him. Japheth is called great. Shem is called great. Shem is great. Japheth is also great, but wants to be greater. By that, the only way to achieve it is to go to war against the Torah. Shem and Japheth are in war. The ger is the fight in the name of Shem. The land of Israel is the place of that fight. Shem went up to Jerusalem as Melchizedek. The Temple Mount is the place of the temple that in this Parsha, it's decreed destruction. What's interesting about the Torah of Shem is the Torah of Moses that contains the Torah of Shem becomes rather archaic, old and a rut and mundane. It's the subterranean view of the Torah of Shem, which we've been away from for a while. Through Bereshis, we were all about Shem. Then in Shemos, we got into the laws, and Shabbat, in Vayikra, it was about the philosophy of the ger. And so far in Bamidbar, we've been covering real depth of the ger. And now it looks like we're taking a turn back to Shem. Next week is going to be a challenge on the Torah from Korach. So in the land itself now there's the fight back to Shem. This is what the spies were sent to do. Go to the land of Israel and connect to Shem. That's where you have the weapon of, let's say, the 7 laws of Noah magnifying all the way out the world. Even when there's not a temple, just the way Shem did when there was not a temple. The whole point is that the Kol HaTorah should be heard. And there's a white fire agent with a blue flame that can purify the land. This is the level of the Gerim gazing from the land all over the world. To view the world in reality from mitzvahs, from the level of fear of God. That's the amplification that the Torah of Shem needs. The 7 laws are a vessel, but the light of those laws becomes the Torah of Shem in the 620. Becomes a faculty of life, and the breath of Shem comes out, meaning the breath of Shem's Torah, which essentially is Shem's perception of reality as a world of God's creation. Therefore, the tzitzit are a constant reminder of this is God's world. The tzitzit are a reminder of fill that world with mitzvahs, whatever you do. And there's a Torah learning under it for however much one wishes to get into. As long as we view the world as a fight under those terms and not AK-47s and rocket launchers, the words of the Gerim of the Torah will catch on. The words of Torah will ignite. That's what the secret of the Torah is. It is a Torah of fire because it is highly flammable. Once one becomes a Ger and seeks to unite with another Ger. Joshua and Caleb united. Joshua then unites with Rachav. Caleb unites with the forefathers. Where does the Torah come from? From that clash and union. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob with Shem. All through the first temple time period, that clash and ignition creates that newness, the sparks and fire of that Torah. And it worked all the way until a Hanukkah redemption. Then it became, switched to a Jewish Torah, because now it's got to have balance. The Ger Torah won out. 7 laws, Ger Toshav, then it needs balance. The Jewish side needs rectified. Only it lost where it came from. Enter the Gerim in the end of days. Now when that final clash takes place in a templeless world, still suffering from the Parsha, then maybe you'll start to connect to the building of the temple that is in this Parsha. As there are 4 craftsmen, Messiah, the son of David, and Joseph, who Rashi tell you in Sukkah 52b, their job is the building of the temple. Elijah, that righteous level to ascend to the place of the real Ger Tzedek, the real levels of righteousness, followed by the righteous priest Shem. Shem, of all people, who as any priest would be dressed in white, much like the tzitzis that are in his merit. Abraham represents the blue thread, showing the dual nature of priesthood of Shem and Abraham, and the monumental union on the Temple Mount between Shem and Abraham that started the building, really, of the third temple, from the level of the priests. Connecting to what that story stood for is where Joshua and Caleb went to. Caleb went to Abraham. Joshua picked up from the daughters of Shem. Just like Tamar, Rachav much later becomes the most recent Ger Tzedek version. So the Abraham-Shem union took off. And that light is in this Parsha. Joshua and Moses are called the voice of the turtle dove. Caleb is very reminiscent, as having the same gematria as Elijah. what we find is that in this Parsha is the light of the voice of the turtle dove. From the exterior realm of the spies who represent the voice. Whether it's evil speech or positive speech. The Zohar ends that there are three voices that go out in the world. Ironically, when you take the son of Noah, of Shem, Arafchashad, in the opposite letters, what his name comes to spell is Bat Kul Gimel. That soul that represents three voices, which the Zohar then says the three voices are the snake, a soul dying, and an animal rubbing against rocks. Those voices are never lost. They circulate all around the world. And it doesn't know where those voices, why those three voices. But what is said is, when the voice of man is heard in this world, when the broadcast of Shem's Torah down below, continuing the work by Joshua and Caleb, repairing the sins of the tribes, starting with Judah, culminating with Elijah and Elisha, going through the second temple, where the 7 laws took hold, going into the 2,000 years of exile, which are a war against the Torah, where the energy coming down from the repair of Elijah and Elisha and Caleb and Joshua took place. 2,000 years of Mashiach we are in, culminating very soon, which took place after 2,000 years of Torah, which took place after 2,000 years of chaos. 6,000 years of creation. And where we stand now is a Jewish world and Torah devoid of Ger Torah, Ger anything. And ironically and mysteriously, the Gerim are coming back in the end of days. What we find is, in this Parsha, the voice is told very clearly of Caleb and Joshua versus the spies. We know the redemption lies in the voice of the turtle dove. The turtle dove is the spy. The Gerim are those that capture the new, fresh dew of creation that comes from that inner dimension of the Torah of Shem. May we be zocha and meritorious to hear the voice of the turtle dove and to experience the repair of what is called the spy in the Parsha, but in the terms of the Hebrew, the repair of the Torah. Thank you very much. Have a great week. See everybody next week, and thank you.